Hannity.
Right, so as Republicans begin their march towards the 2010 midterm elections, believe it or not, there are already rumors about who may step up in 2012 and attempt to unseat the anointed one. And we've been following the movements of several GOP heavyweights over the past few months. And one thing that is always grabbing our attention is when one of these possible contenders steps foot in a key primary state. And wouldn't you know it, my next guest is headed to the great state of New Hampshire this weekend for a major event. And he's here to tell us all about it. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. And by the way, he has a free online newsletter at newt.org. And whenever I see that smile, I know that I'm not going to get the answer. But it just so happens you more than anybody right now are heading to, let's see, New Hampshire, Iowa, South Carolina. So you are thinking, you can come clean now. You are thinking about maybe running.
Well, I'm thinking about being helpful to the citizens who are concerned. Stewart, New Hampshire is going to have a tremendous training program on Saturday, looking at new media, looking, for example, at Scott Brown's great victory, and looking at what we can learn from Obama's campaign. And they asked me to come up for American Solutions and share a set of ideas about the things we're doing to try to expand the ability of citizens to be involved. So how could I turn them down, Sean?
Yeah, and at the Iowa fair, they're going to have fried Twinkies and corn on the cob. I mean, you know.
Well, you know that Callista loves going back to Iowa, so I can't turn her down.
All right, so I'm going to move on because I know I'm not going to get the answer, and you've got that smile on your face, and it just it melts my ability to grill you on it. But certainly, I suspect that you're probably going to give this serious consideration, and you said as much.
Of course.
Okay. Now, well, first of all, let me move on the issue, I think, of Homeland Security, national security. Now, this big news that broke as we were on the program late last night is that, in fact, they reconsidered this issue of KSM and the trial in New York. Here's my question, though. Instinctively, they didn't think it was a bad idea. Instinctively, they thought it was okay to give Miranda rights to the Christmas Day bomber. Instinctively, they say there's not a war on terror. Instinctively, the president thinks he can negotiate with Iran without preconditions. I'm worried about their first instincts rather than where they eventually end up because of public pressure. Do you have that same issue?
I mean, first of all, you don't know where they're going to end up because they keep equivocating and maneuvering. I think if Mayor Bloomberg had not come out so aggressively against what he estimated would be $1 billion waste of money, they might still be going to New York. I don't think they're doing this because they're rethinking it. The obvious answer with KSM and the other terrorists is try them in a military tribunal and try them in Cuba. We have a facility at Guantanamo, and go ahead and use it. Now, they're going to maneuver, dance, and bob and weave and do all sorts of things. It is a terrible idea to take terrorists into a civilian criminal court under procedures which allow them to try to get American secrets out in the open. It is a terrible waste of money for the American taxpayer to fund that kind of effort. I agree entirely with Scott Brown, who, as one of his campaign promises, kept telling people, let's spend the money on equipment for American troops, not on lawyers for terrorists who are trying to kill Americans.
Well, I would, listen, I am hopeful. This is such a bad idea. It's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and frankly, I think put people's lives in jeopardy and at risk in New York. It's going to become a worldwide circus. I would like them to reconsider, maybe almost immediately. In the 50 minutes we interviewed the Christmas Day bomber, he said more attacks are coming. He trained with people that are planning these attacks. Can we immediately begin interrogating that person? Is that something for reconsideration?
Sure. Look, the first big threshold for President Obama to cross is to recognize we are at war. And if you're at war, none of the criminal defense rules apply. When you're at war, you're allowed to take an enemy combatant, and the Christmas Day bomber is certainly an enemy combatant, as is KSM, and you're allowed to have them interrogated professionally within the rules, but nonetheless interrogated by both the intelligence community and the military community. There is zero reason to give them Miranda rights. They don't have Miranda rights. They're not American citizens, and even American citizens would not have Miranda rights if they were engaged in combat against the United States. Totally different set of rules.
All right, I was asking you in the last couple of times you've been on the program, very specifically if you thought that Barack Obama had the ability, and you witnessed this up close and personal, and maybe the tendencies or for self-preservation the ability to move to the center, to the right, as Bill Clinton did on ending welfare as we know it. The era of big government is over. Was that question answered for you in the President's State of the Union on Wednesday night?
Well, I thought it was a very weak State of the Union. I thought he was all over the place. He was pandering to every group, a little bit here, a little bit there. It was very disorganized. I thought his style was weak. I actually thought Peter Roth in New York in U.S. News had the right analysis. He said he looked so small compared to a previous great speaker. He said, no, I'm not referring to George W. Bush or Ronald Reagan. I'm talking about Obama, the candidate. And I think if you look at how relatively lacking in authority he was last night and compare it to what he was like back as a candidate, this is sort of an amazing shrinking presidency at the present time.
Did you get the impression I did that he almost, you know, was attempting to get the chamber to rise and start chanting, yes, we can, that he sort of missed the old days of the praise and adulation?
I thought he was floundering around. Let me say that the two of the places I was really struck by, one was the total explicit hypocrisy of Speaker Nancy Pelosi smiling and standing to applaud when he called for the end of earmarks. I thought it was such a total act of hypocrisy, knowing that Chairman Obie has just asked for members to submit all their earmark requests by March. If you look at that particular clip, it is truly astounding the contempt she has for the American people and her belief that we're stupid enough to think that her applauding it means it has any meaning. The other was when he was explicitly wrong about the Citizens United Supreme Court decision, and my impression is that Justice Alito was saying that's wrong, that if you watched his face at that moment, he sort of reacted involuntarily.
Yeah, well, and what's interesting about that, the President was wrong, and that is, and here's the Supreme Court Justice saying not true. The Justice didn't know he was on camera, but the President knew he was on camera. Fairly unprecedented for a President to attack the Supreme Court that's in front of them with Congress and then get the applause that followed.
That's right.
But Orrin Hatch characterized it as rude, but more importantly on substance, the President was wrong when he said that foreign corporations can influence American elections because the ruling specifically said it does not. So what does that say about the constitutional lawyer from Harvard?
Well, look, first of all, the Citizens United case and the work that Dave Bossie did there is an extraordinarily important case and a historic landmark. My take is that the President's lawyers were as wrong about the Supreme Court as they are about trying terrorists, and it should worry every American that the President is getting legal advice that is just this factually out of touch with reality and this factually wrong.